Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're going to continue our talk about the Gospels. But if you've been in church any time, any period of time, you're probably familiar with the Gospels already. At some point, you've probably read them. Everybody loves to preach on the Gospels because it literally is the life of Jesus Christ. They're very familiar to us, and they're all relevant to us today. But one thing that we need to kind of look at when we approach the Gospels, if we're going to read them and study them, is why are they different? Have you ever wondered this question? Why is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, why do they all tell kind of the same story, but from a different perspective? And one reason is a lot of scholars believe that each gospel may have been written either with a different audience or different community in mind, community of believers. And what this means is they're basically written to a different type of people, kind of. And we're going to go into each book and talk a little bit about who these people that the author intended to read it, who they actually were. And although they're kind of written with an influence towards a specific population, they're all relevant for preaching and teaching today. Let's start with Mark first, because Mark's probably the oldest of the Gospels, probably the first one that was written. But typically, most scholars believe that Mark was actually written to an audience that wasn't familiar with the Old Testament scriptures. And these are your non-Jews, so it would have been beneficial a lot for Gentiles. Mark starts with the beginning of Jesus' ministry, and he portrays Jesus as a servant of the Lord. He basically shows how Jesus came and did exactly what God told him to do. Mark is unique because it also records more miracles than any other of the Gospels. So we got the most miracles there. Matthew's the next one we're going to talk about. And Matthew, as we know, was a disciple and a tax collector that Jesus called to be a disciple. But we think that Matthew was typically written towards a Jewish audience. And why we believe this is because it's got a lot of references and allusions to the Old Testament. And so it kind of implies that you would have been familiar as a reader with the Old Testament scriptures. So that would have typically been a Jew. So Matthew probably wrote to the Jewish audience with them in mind. One example of an allusion, besides just scriptural references, is the genealogy. All of us love reading the genealogies. If you haven't skipped over one, then you're lying. But Matthew includes the genealogy from a specific perspective. Matthew's perspective in doing this is basically to show how Jesus is in the lineage of the Messiah, how he is there, and because this was very, very important in this time period. That's why we see so many genealogies, because lineage and heritage was very important, and they knew that in order to be the Messiah, one of the things that had to be fulfilled was that the Messiah come from the bloodline of David. And King David's bloodline is established in Matthew, and it's something that he starts off with because it's vital, because as the Jewish people who are familiar with the Old Testament read that, it would have set a light bulb off in their head. They would have said, oh, I know who this is. This guy could be the Messiah. And then as he progresses through, he shows how that happens, and he articulates why Jesus is Messiah. The next book, let's do Luke. So Luke, basically, we talked a little bit about him in the previous video, but Luke was actually a medical doctor and a travel companion of the Apostle Paul. And what we see is Luke is written more intellectually, which you would kind of expect that from a medical doctor. In the introduction, we see the motive of his work, where he says, "Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile an account of the things accomplished among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. It seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it out for you in consecutive order." So Luke sets out in his introduction to tell us why he's writing. He's writing because he's gathered all this information about the eyewitness testimony of Jesus. He's gathered it together, and he wants to present it accurately to the readers so that we can see what really happened, what historical event happened. And as we read through Luke, we see certain things. You know, a lot of people think that Luke was written more towards the Greek or the Roman audience. And a lot of this is because Luke was more than likely not Jewish. He was probably a Gentile. But one of the things that he kind of seems to set out to prove about Jesus is how he's the perfect man. And this was something that in the Greek and Roman culture, it was something that they constantly set out in both their artwork and their literature. They were always talking about the perfect man. That's why you see all the statues with the abs and all that stuff. They want the perfect man. And so Luke shows them who the perfect man was, and that was Jesus Christ. And last but not least, we have John. And we're doing John last because John is different. It belongs in its own category. It is, once you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then you get to John, you're going to see that John is a much different perspective. It offers the same details, but John writes, you know, as he basically writes as the disciple that Jesus loved, because that's who he was. He was a disciple and follower of Jesus. He was in Jesus's inner circle. And when John writes his book on Jesus, he basically is showing us a lot of the spiritual things that Jesus did. He shows us healing, miracles, stuff like that. But what we know is John was an eyewitness of Jesus, as we talked about. He was a disciple. You know, he leaned on his chest at the dinner table. I mean, so he knew Jesus very well. He knew everything that he had accomplished in his ministry. He lived with him day to day, so he knew this man like a brother. But John claims to write his book so that you may believe in Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. That's John 20:31. And so what we see in John's work is that John is going to set out to basically establish that, you know, Jesus was the eternal God made man who walked the earth. We see this in the beautiful introduction about the Word made flesh, describing Jesus as, you know, present at creation, present with the Lord. And we see it throughout his work, how he is the eternal God made flesh. Multiple references to him being the Son of God, things of this nature. But I hope this video helps you as we approach the Gospels. Hopefully it'll help you kind of get an understanding of why these books are similar, and that they all offer the narrative of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. But they truly are beautiful books that we need to meditate on. We need to study constantly. Nothing beats studying the ministry of Jesus. But if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. Please keep sharing it with your friends. I can't believe how many people we're reaching now, but I'd love to continue that. If there's anything you'd like to see, comments, suggestions, feedback, negative, positive, whatever, send it my way. You know, direct message me, Facebook message me, email me, whatever, however you need to get in touch with me. But I'd love to hear it. But until next time, I love you guys. Blessings.